who needs no introduction.
The Black Information Network is committed to bringing you up-to-the-date news stories that are relevant, informative, and inspiring. And while news stories are always being updated and others are breaking, we understand that you need to be in the know all week long. Welcome to your midweek memo on the Black Information Network Daily Podcast with me, your host, Ramses Ja. All right, first up from the Black Information Network, Vice President Kamala Harris is on track to become the Democratic nominee for the 2024 presidential election, according to a poll by the Associated Press. On Sunday, July 21st, President Joe Biden announced that he was dropping out of the race and endorsed Harris for president. Other endorsements for Harris from Democratic elected officials, party leaders, and political organizations poured in as her campaign set a new 24-hour record for donations on Monday, July 22nd. Under party rules, Harris will need votes of support from 1,976 delegates to become her party's nominee. An AP poll shows she secured support from roughly 2,688 delegates, with 54 others being undecided. No other candidates were floated by delegates contacted by AP. California State Democratic Chairman Rusty Hicks said roughly 75% of the state's delegation who were on a call Tuesday, July 23rd, expressed their support for Harris. Quote, "I've not heard anyone mentioning or calling for any other candidate," unquote, Hicks said. Hicks goes on to say, quote, "Tonight's vote was a momentous one," unquote. Though Harris is projected to become the party's nominee, delegates are still free to vote for the candidate of their choice at the Democratic National Convention in August. Democrats may also move to hold a virtual roll call to vote on the nominee ahead of the DNC. So this is, of course, this is what we expected, but this is one of those things that just kind of puts more of a bow on it, or maybe not a bow on it, but it certainly quiets a lot of the chatter online, because there are a lot of people that say, well, just because Joe Biden has endorsed her doesn't mean that she's going to be the Democratic frontrunner, which is why you kind of have to be careful and, be technical. But it looks like she has way more than enough of the delegates that she's going to need to secure the party's nomination. But the truth of the matter is that the closer we get to a Harris administration, the more excited I find myself becoming. Regardless of what the Biden administration has done, I hope Kamala Harris wins. A win for her will show the world that betting on black women can pay off, and we really need that. I hope that her leadership will show the world that black female leadership is viable. And I hope we thrive as a result of her presidency. I think the country and the world would be changed for the better as a result of that. Moving on, from TMZ, new body cam footage shows the moment a white police officer in Illinois shot and killed a black woman named Sonya Massey, who actually called 911 for help. The footage was released by authorities in Springfield, Illinois, Monday, which depicts Sangamon County Sheriff's Deputy Sean Grayson facing off with Massey earlier this month after she called the cops over suspicions of a prowler near her home. In the video, you see Grayson and his partner in Massey's house, where they're asking her to provide her ID, and eventually they tell her to get a boiling pot of water off the stove. In response, she tells the officers she'll rebuke him in the name of Jesus, which prompts a strong response from Grayson, who says, "You better effing not. I swear to God, I'll effing shoot you right in your effing face," suggesting he perceived a threat from her. Grayson draws his weapon and points it at Massey, which prompts her to duck on the ground, at which point Grayson opens fire on her. Grayson's partner suggests grabbing a medical kit, but Grayson shuts that down, noting there's nothing to be done since it's a head wound. Upon realizing Massey is still breathing, Grayson relents and says he'll get his medical kit, but the life-saving efforts were unsuccessful. It's also important to note that Grayson was fired and is now facing charges of first-degree murder, aggravated battery with a firearm, and official misconduct, and he has pleaded not guilty to those charges. And this is a story that is definitely a big one. This is up there. And since the footage was released on Monday, people have been able to see the final moments of this woman's life. Clearly a woman that was invoking some spiritual support in her final moments, rebuking the devil. And again, the officer perceived that as a threat, or was offended by it, or whatever. And then I guess perceived the boiling water as a threat, which again, they asked her to get from the stove. Because that's my understanding based on the article. And then she ducks down and he shoots her in the face. So this one, we're going to break this down on Civic Cypher on Saturday a little bit more. But I need to be honest with you, I haven't watched the video. I tried, I read the story and I couldn't do it. I'm just not made that way. I wish that I was, but these things kind of catch up to me. A quick story. Once upon a time, many moons ago, when I was a teenager, there was a film called, I think it was called Faces of Death, that came out. It was like VHS still. And some friends of mine from school were really excited to watch it. And I remember watching one of the clips, and it was a Spanish-speaking gentleman, and they shot him in the chest. I remember he just said, "Ay, ay, ay," and then he like fell and just stopped moving. And I knew then, I didn't know before, and it wasn't a conscious thing, but I knew, like, kind of on a cellular level, that was not for me. That's tough, and it's heartbreaking, and it's really sad. And what we have here is a video that tells the story better than an article ever could. And to make it worse, it's a black woman who had done nothing wrong. She was binding, rebuking the devil that was in her house, was following her instructions, getting the boiling water off the stove. She called them because she was concerned someone was, prowling around her house. And she ends up getting shot in the face. And even if this officer does go to prison for the rest of his life, there's no way to make that right. And no matter which way you spin it, there's going to be a not insignificant number of people out there who agree with Donald Trump in that police should be exempt from charges, and immunity should be granted, like, across the board. And we're still going to talk more about this story because there's another development, but for now, until we get to Civic Cypher, we'll leave that one right there. All right, next up from TMZ, Sonya Massey's father is sharing his heartbreak after his daughter was shot and killed in her home by a white police officer, slamming the deputy as a devilish figure. James Wilburn spoke with Gayle King on CBS Mornings after body cam footage of the shooting showed Sangamon County Sheriff's Deputy Sean Grayson shooting Massey earlier this month. This after she'd actually called 911 for help. According to her dad, he claims he was never told a deputy was involved with the untimely passing of his daughter, and says he was led to believe an intruder shot and killed his daughter. JW said he learned about the facts of the case from his brother, and he felt they had been misled as part of what he characterized as an alleged cover-up. He says he's thankful for the body cam footage, otherwise he may never have known what truly happened to Sonya. As for her final words, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," Wilburn says he felt his daughter knew her life was in danger. He even labeled Grayson as a, quote, emissary of Satan, unquote. So again, we're looking at the aftermath of these sorts of things. We're looking at a system that is optimized to protect police officers, with how information flows, with how the best possible optics are given to the officer, and the worst possible optics are given to the person who ends up the victim of police shootings, police brutality, police injustice. And we live in a country that just feels that's okay. Oftentimes there is a stunning silence when something like this happens. I don't suspect that'll be true here. It wasn't true after George Floyd. It wasn't true after Rodney King. But I gave you 3 names. I can give you another 30. But the data would suggest that there's hundreds of stories, thousands of stories of interactions that we don't hear about at all. And that is born out of an environment, a culture, a policing culture that is just very toxic toward and to Black people. So even if you're not the victim of police brutality or police shooting, the toxicity in those systems still makes its way to you. The unfair treatment, and it's poisoned the entirety of the criminal justice system and the carceral system. But in this instance, where the information was being siloed and, things weren't being shared with the family members, her father, and he suspects that they were attempting a cover-up, that is a more likely truth than not, based on just the sheer amount of stories that I cover. And I've only been doing this a handful of years. So we still got a little bit ahead of us, but fortunately, the officer in question, as I mentioned, has been arrested for murder. Finally, from TheRoot.com, singer Chris Brown is once again involved in a scandal as 4 Texas concert-goers have filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against him and his tour promoter. According to Entertainment Weekly, in a lawsuit filed Monday in Harris County, Texas, Brown and several members of his entourage allegedly surrounded, then brutally and severely beat Larry Parker, Joseph Lewis, Charles Bush, and DeMarcus Powell. The complaint alleges that Brown participated in and directed the incident. The plaintiffs are seeking $50 million as well as a temporary restraining order against the defendants. Along with Brown, they are also suing tour promoter Live Nation, Cinco Siege, Hood Boss, and Yella Beezy. The alleged assault took place Friday after Brown's 11:15 tour at Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas. The suit claims the plaintiffs were waiting backstage in the artist VIP area with approximately 40 women. After waiting 30 minutes, they were about to leave when Brown showed up. According to Variety, as Bush went to congratulate the forever singer, one of his people reminded him that he and Bush were beefing the last time that they saw one another. Brown allegedly replied, "Oh yeah, we were. What's up?" Expletive deleted. "I don't forget." Expletive deleted. At this point, Brown, as well as 7 to 10 members of his entourage, allegedly punched Bush in the chest. Then Hood Boss picked up a chair and threw it at Bush's head. The suit states that as Parker fled into a stairwell, Brown allegedly directed his entourage to punch him in the face and chest and kick him in the head. Quote, "No one should have to endure what these clients endured," end quote, said Tony Busby, the plaintiff's attorneys, in a statement to Variety. It goes on to say, quote, "We will seek the maximum amount of damages allowed by law for this egregious conduct," end quote. So I don't know what to make of this. Obviously, there's a level of responsibility and maturity that you would hope that an artist who's been around as long as Chris Brown has would have reached. Again, I don't know how true this is, but I hope that Chris Brown has reached that level of maturity and doesn't get dragged into silly stuff like this. But the thing I worry about is that if you're going to get in a fight with 40 women backstage and they're all standing around at a Chris Brown show, cameras ready, then there's bound to be evidence of what actually happened and what didn't actually happen. And if this ends up costing Chris Brown $50 million, that's a hard lesson to learn. But at the same time, when you get to that level, street beef I mean, I clearly don't need to tell you this because you know it too. Street beef is something that you leave on the street when you can afford $50 million. So, guess we'll leave it right there. This has been a production of the Black Information Network. Today's show was produced by Chris Thompson. Have some thoughts you'd like to share? Use the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. While you're there, be sure to hit subscribe and download all of our episodes. I am your host, Ramses Ja, on all social media. And join us tomorrow as we share our news with our voice from our perspective, right here on the Black Information Network Daily Podcast.